At AV&R, our mission is to humanize robotics. We decided to create this podcast series to help you demystify the world of robotics and discover what some of the brightest minds in the field are doing. Welcome to Robotics for All Podcasts by AV&R.
We are excited to welcome Max Falcone, Vice President of Sales Engineering, and Shane Rose, Marketing and Business Development Manager, both from PushCorp. Max has had more than 20 years of automation experience, having spent 10 years with a large automotive systems integrator, over 5 years with a robot OEM, and now 5 years with PushCorp. Shane has had a career rooted in the industrial sector since 2018, a focus on robotics since 2021, and Shane brings experience in bridging technical innovation with practical market strategies. PushCorp is a leader in robotic force control, servo spindles, and automation equipment, right in line with my day job outside of podcasting. In this episode, we hear about how PushCorp started, why they believe in robotic finishing as a critical solution for SME manufacturing, what the future holds with the next US government, and what important developments they believe will unlock our industry. Stay with us as Max, Shane, and I unfold the story of their approach to robotics and manufacturing. You won't want to miss out on this enlightening conversation that touches upon the SME manufacturing in North America. Hope everyone enjoys the show. Here we go. Hi, Max. Hi, Shane. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Michael. Glad to be here.
Good. All right, guys. Let's jump right in. I always enjoy talking with you guys. You always have great stories, whether it's about bootlegging or what have you. There's always something interesting to chat about, but let's stick with business today. Tell me about PushCorp. I don't know who wants to start. Max, you've been out knocking on doors for years, and Shane, you're a pro at marketing, so you both can tell a good story. I let you guys fight over who gets to introduce PushCorp and what you guys get into.
Yeah, I'll jump into that one. So here at PushCorp, we're the creators and manufacturers of the active compliance device solution for the robotics market. We incorporated in 1993. We were born out of a college doctoral thesis project for Dr. Edwin Skip Erlbacher. So we've been in business now and called Dallas our home for over 30 years, 32 years next year. So throughout the 90s, we started with the active compliance device, expanded to passive, servo spindles, belt sanders, finishing stands, a robotic belt sander, weld shavers. So always been within the material removal genre the whole entire time, and always supporting the robotic finishing market, right? So as the market's changed, as new opportunities have come up, we've created new technologies, and every day we continue to innovate and expand on this, right? So, for example, this year there was a big focus on doing releasing solutions for the small robot market. So whether that be a cobot, a small industrial robot, that was big focus this year, as those solutions start to mature and get out there. We released our RI90 product that allows you to use the same spindle in both a radial and axial solution through a tool change. So we continue to innovate, and then some of the key milestones early on, just like any startup, like where you can get money to eat tomorrow, right? So we took on some SBIRs, we took on some development projects early on that got us going, and then once we started to get some traction, right, dealing a lot in the automotive industry, aerospace, that really helped us on, especially with the automotive being a higher volume sale, multiple robots, multiple things. Those type of things really helped us early on in our history, but that's what essentially got us to today.
Yeah. Thanks for the great intro. So 32 years, we just celebrated our 30th. So congrats on 32 years. I hope we make it to 32.
Yeah, congrats to you too.
I have no doubt that you'll make it to 32 and well beyond that, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Shane. Appreciate that. And I jumped into robotics in the year 2000. So my career is 24 years. And I remember robots back then, they were getting better. Machine vision was a big deal back then. I don't remember doing a lot of force sensing and a lot of stuff like that. Although, you had companies like ATI that had some products, and there was a lot was focused around, safety and making sure you didn't break things when the robot went to grab something. Um, so tell me about, just maybe say a little bit about, why the sense of touch is important and what was important back then. And you said robotic finishing for the whole way through, right? What did you
That's
guys
right.
see in that market too?
Yeah, I think robots traditionally have been assigned the task of picking things up and putting them down, right?
Yeah,
So the robot as a process tool, probably welding is really where that really started to come on board. Um, and then painting, welding, sealing, are type of your process related tasks. So I think for us and um, the revelation that Dr. Erlbacher had was that robots are not good at applying forces. Even with the force torque sensor, you're
yeah,
using all 6 degrees of freedom of that robot to possibly adjust for ounces out of the TCP. So if your robot weighs thousands of pounds, you're manipulating all that mass to try to control ounces out at the end, where our technology, we control the force that's actually past the flange of the robot. So it's actually out there. So we're only controlling, tens to hundreds of pounds out on the flange of the compliance device. So we can react much faster. It's a much more simplified programming routine because at that point the robot is truly just a manipulator. We are not relying on robot um, translations and motions to adjust our force. We're doing it all on the carriage itself. So I think that's the big thing that sets us apart to technologies that were available and even technologies that are still available today, is that we're manipulating the weight out at the end of the tool, and the robot just becomes a manipulator.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about SME manufacturers, so small, medium enterprises. I would say that this is a trend, especially for automation. I don't know, let's call it the past 5 years or so. Everyone's kind of recognized that's a bit of the lifeblood of manufacturing in North America. Traditionally automation guys like ourselves, we focused on automotive was always a big buzzword, high volume parts, repeated tasks. But like I said, the trend has changed the past 5 years. So, and what I see coming from you guys, that SMEs and SME manufacturing is at the heart of who you guys strive to help every day. So why is that sector important to you? And you know, what are some of the things the potentials you see there?
Yeah, I can maybe jump in on that, and then Max, feel free to provide any additional context. But I just came across a stat in the U.S. Over 98% of businesses are classified as small to medium manufacturer. Manufacturing businesses are small to medium,
That's
enterprises. As well as I think in Canada it's over 99%. So the large manufacturer is when you look at the breadth of manufacturing or business in North America is only a small part, although they've really had most of the capex budget or the investment to spend in automation and robotics, especially. And when you look at the productivity between small to medium manufacturer and a large manufacturer, there's really significant gaps there. That if doing the same, using the same processes and all of that, if the small to medium manufacturer was all of a sudden to have the same perhaps like revenue, like you're able to scale just magically overnight, there'd still be significant productivity gaps there, just because they don't have, or they historically haven't had access to a lot of technologies that have potentially been, where there's been like a gate there due to cost or complexity or things like that. And so you mentioned within the last 5 years, and I think that it is a pretty critical time in robotics, in that there's so many tailwinds that are now enabling the small to medium manufacturer to, access automation much more easily. Prices are coming down in general for some of these technologies. Ease of programming has been something that a lot of the companies have prioritized. The introduction of things like cobots, which for material removal, I just want to say a cobot isn't always the right choice. Like there's definitely depending on the application, it's possible though. It is possible that you could use a cobot for a material removal application. And then, kind of innovative ways of, around the cost. So, there are companies out there that are, kind of doing the as service model where, it's maybe not as large of a CapEx, or maybe you're doing something a little bit different in terms of the cost. And then just as more and more companies realize that there is demand and there is growth to be had within the small to medium manufacturer, they're doing some innovative things like creating kind of standardized solutions where you don't have to necessarily spend, or invest. You invest in the engineering one time, and then you pay that off through repeated sales of a standardized solution. And so I think there's just so many tailwinds that are leading to the ability for the small to medium manufacturer. Also, they're realizing that they need to automate. A few years ago, it's kind of interesting. You had to kind of tiptoe around the labor conversation a bit. Now you can't avoid it. People just can't find people to do the work, especially around material removal applications. And so I think more and more small to medium manufacturers are realizing this, and all of the factors that be in terms of automating are just lending to the ability now for that small to medium manufacturer to have access.
Yeah, I'd like to pick at one of the things you talked about, cost. So I'm in sales too, and I think when you talk with a customer, when you get to their purchasing department, of course they want everything to be about cost, right? It's too expensive, or it needs to be lower price for XYZ reason. So that conversation, I guess, what are the real factors that you guys see? Like, what is the importance of that? Is it really to appease the purchasing department, or is there some real challenges around that for some of these SMEs? Because, there's a balance between being able to get a job done, right? So, when I look at, I do something in my house, if I want the job done well, yeah, I don't necessarily want to go with the cheapest person, right? I think that's important because you want,
there's some people that do
quality work done.
There's some people that do.
Okay. Yeah. No, fair. So, let's debate this. What is the importance about cost, and why should we be working to drive costs down?
Yeah, I think that is the problem, is that people are focusing on cost and not value.
Yeah.
Right. So, the discussion of cost, around cost, price, whatever it may be, right? For me, I don't think a lot of people realize the value, and I don't think a lot of people are good at selling the value, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these small to medium-sized manufacturers are competing against fast food for labor for probably the first time ever, right? I know for a fact the fast food places in the town that I live in are offering $15 or more an hour, for fast food, right? And you go online and you look at some of these job postings for some of these jobs, whether it's material handling job, a finishing job, grinding, they're not offering a lot more than that, right? So I think, like Shane said, the labor discussion was always tough, but we're not raising kids that are coming out of high school saying, "Mom, Dad, I want to go work in a factory," right? So I think the labor shortage is real. It's only going to get worse, and I don't think that at the end of the day, that mentality of getting beat up on price and going and get beat up by the purchasing team, I think that I see that mentality changing, just because the manufacturing engineers and the plant managers are screaming off the roof of the building saying we need this, right? And if they want to stay viable, the reality is that I've seen personally where I dreaded a lot of those conversations in the past, and now we're going into those conversations more as where they're seeing us as more as like a solution partner, than what we've had in the past. It's not so adversarial, right? So
Yeah.
And I think there is a little bit more empathy to the supplier that has been coming out, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like I said, I really don't like whether we're working with an end user or working with a engineering company like AV&R. Like, I want to be your partner. I want to be there to help you. And for that to happen, it's got to be two-way street. Like, we can't get beat up on price all the time, because we still need to stay in business to be able to support whatever we install, right? And there's a shift happening. And I had a guy literally plant manager tell me, "I don't care about price, I value time," right? I need a solution. I need it as fast as possible, because my parts are piling up, they're not getting processed, right?
Yeah.
He says that doesn't mean I have a $10 million budget, but I'm willing to spend more to get the right thing sooner than spend less and wait 12 months for something that might not work, right? So
Yeah.
so I think there is a shift happening, and I think that as solution providers and as PushCorp is an SME, right? We're a small manufacturer making a niche product for a very niche industry, right? So we have a lot of the same pain points as our customers. We understand that. We understand what's going on. We understand what it takes to run a business. We understand what it takes to manufacture parts. We know we're buying raw material. We're CNCing. We've got suppliers that we have to negotiate with and deal with. And at the end of the day, I think, this whole, the old adage of treat people how you want to be treated, also goes into that portion of price negotiation, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and that's really how I approach those discussions, is from, I want to be your partner. I don't just want to sell you something then disappear with your money, right? I want to be there in the good times and the bad, and and help you manufacture and solve solutions, and not just this solution but other solutions, not just give you a solution for this, but also give you a solution for other things that you may have trouble with. So I don't know that I really answered your question, but I think
No, I like it.
At the end of the day, I am seeing a shift, right? And maybe it's the more empathetic younger generations that are coming into these roles, and maybe it's the realization of it is a two-way street, and it needs to be a two-way street, right? So and that's the way I see it. That's the way I push for it. And we provide a very unique product with a unique set, and we've got a highly skilled team that can help you solve your problems, and all those things have value. So
I think
go ahead, sorry. Shane.
Yeah,
Go for it, Shane.
I think specifically for material removal, and this may very well be the case for other types of automation as well. But there's a lot of hidden costs in manual material removal that aren't necessarily seen. Two big ones that are pretty visible are the cost of the abrasive media and the labor. But then once you factor in things like turnover, you factor in things like PPE, you factor in, if you're having throughput issues, like if your capacity is reduced because you don't have enough people working, or, you have turnover or things like this, scrap, rework. And I think those are the things that if you can help articulate that to the manufacturer, that can help kind of paint the bigger picture around why automation makes sense. Because if you go to somebody who's got a 300 head operation, and you're like, it's going to be $1 million. They're like, whoa, $1 million, like that's a lot. I don't think we're ready to spend that. But if you start the conversation a little bit different and kind of help them understand the bigger picture, I think that really can help kind of reframe that conversation, because price can definitely be a barrier.
Yeah. And not to mention, I find, especially these days, a lot of those customers appreciate that discussion, because whether you're sitting with a manufacturing engineer or somebody that's really good at manufacturing, building that business case and framing, helping them do their pitch to justify why. First, they have pain, right? They got to solve that pain. They feel it, but they maybe aren't great at quantifying it. So those discussions about teasing out where are the costs and why are you feeling that pain, I find people appreciate that. And it helps in that partnership that you talked about, Max. And all the wave of automation. I don't know who described it to me like this. Maybe it was one of my conversations with 3M or something like that. But they said, the first wave of automation was all the easy stuff. Robots were there to pick and place and do the stuff people were doing over and over and over again. Now this wave of automation, it's harder, right? We're going after processes. So we're all building on each other's shoulders, right? So your guy, PushCorp, your guy's stuff has to work, so that when AV&R comes in and puts it all together and puts it with a robot, let's say it's a FANUC robot, it's got to work too. And as part of it working, we're also that thought about the cost is also important, right? Because if any one of us is taking too much meat off the bone, that end customer, they just won't be able to afford it, right? So the value for each of us has to be there. The value for the customer has to be there, and teasing out all that information, that's important.
For sure.
One of the things you mentioned, kind of indirectly, but it struck a thought for me personally, is when coming into this industry, you don't. It's this could be said for, I guess, any industry, but the robotics and automation industry in particular, it's so reliant on partnerships. I mean, it's rare for one company to be able to meet the entire needs of any specific end user or person who wants to automate. And so, the kind of byproduct of that is that everybody kind of knows everybody. Like there's, definitely it's a small world if you're within the industry for any period of, extended time. And the reputation piece, it's very important. And that's something that, PushCorp has done a fantastic job, even, prior to me coming on, back to 1993, and really, creating, the focus has always been on partnerships, and how can we support for the long term. And, if I'm sure you have maybe seen this, but, if a company has a bad reputation, that can spread quickly, and that can be rather unfortunate for the person. But for us, I don't think we do it because we have to. I think we do it because we want to, because it's the right thing to do, and it's much better, and it's much not always easier, but it's definitely more rewarding if you come with that frame of mind around being partnering truly, like to solve the problem, and not just doing it to make a sale or make a win. And I think that there's definitely different approaches out there, within the industry, and that's one thing that I really do value. And I absolutely see that in AV&R as well. But within PushCorp, like we definitely prioritize that, like being solid partners that are really truly here.
Well, not only do you talk the talk, but you're looking to walk the walk, right? So your integrator network, that's maybe a great segue to talk a little bit about that, because Shane, you spend a lot of time thinking about this, and Max, you spend a lot of time talking to a lot of integrators. Tell us, and thank you, by the way, we're officially part of the integrator network, so we're very excited about that. Maybe tell us about why of you. Obviously, it makes sense. You're providing tooling, so you want as many people using the tooling. But why is your integrator network that you're building? Why is it so important? Besides, we talked a lot about partnership. Maybe you can elaborate on that. Why is this an important business point for you guys?
Yeah, so Shane and I have worked together really hard on this, and from the sales side is PushCorp, we don't do system integration. So our business model is supporting the subject matter experts in automation that want to tackle material removal. As far as companies out there that are dedicated to robotic automation projects for material removal in North America, we could probably count them on one hand, maybe go to a second hand, but it won't be that many more, right? So it's critical for us to build a network of partners that we can rely on to put these solutions forth out into the industry. There's a lot of system integrators and engineering companies and solution providers, line builders out there that are doing material handling, they're doing welding, they're doing these things. But like you said, the stuff that we're doing is not trivial. We're trying to achieve, in most cases, trying to achieve a finish. It's a lot of these places that we're going into, it's incredibly subjective on that finish, right? We might do something in the lab or go somewhere and work with an integrator, think it looks great, and customer comes in and they hold it in the light like this, they hold it in the light like that, they look this, they look down the line, they see things that we don't see just because they have that they've tuned their senses to what they're looking for as far as what success looks like. So as part of the integrator work, it's to have more people playing within the material removal, but also have people at different levels, right? So we have different size integrators, different geographic location integrators that we're working with, integrators that even support different brands of robotic arms, right? Some integrators are very dedicated to one brand, and other integrators are willing to do any type of brand. So as we're supporting other companies and, the whole reshoring, onshoring, nearshoring, the shoring conversation that's going on, as these things start to come back, we might get somebody that comes in that's bringing equipment in that has an affinity for a certain type of robot, just because that's what they're used to, right? So we want to make sure that we can support all those end customers, but also have people that can provide solutions at different price points, and can provide different solutions across the spectrum of manufacturing, not only geographically, but like we were talking earlier, financially, right? So So it's very important us to have that network and be able to partner with those companies and bring those companies into companies that have already engaged us to either do a lab or a study or a conversation or things that we've been going with.
Yeah.
And as far as the, kind of impetus or the, the start of the system integrator network, there's lots of them out there. Like a lot of, robot manufacturers have them, other suppliers do have them. There's a case to be made that we're maybe a little late to the game, but I think that really has aided in the success that we've seen so far, because we've been able to take, and get feedback from, integrators about what are the things that they value, what are the things that actually are of benefit. And I don't want to, kind of turn this into a selling our system integrator network. But as far as kind of the, at a higher level, we understand how solution providers, system integrators, kind of how they, the scenarios that they find themselves in. It's not always the case, but oftentimes, they're going in and, if a manufacturer is either looking for a new integrator, has not integrated at all, any robotic or automated system, they need to prove themselves out that first time. And then that will hopefully lead to continued projects that then they can, get kind of a continued revenue out of that end user. And the big piece of that, though, is like the success of the project. Like the project needs to go successfully for them to, one, maintain their reputation, because a lot of stuff within the robotics industry is word of mouth. Two, to hopefully continue to get more projects from that end user, that manufacturer, that organization. And so what we're looking to do is really, be partners to ensure that those, the material removal projects that they do are successful in their implementation. We don't want some robot, especially some robot with our equipment on it, sitting in a corner collecting dust, with the person who had to go and advocate for that, $500,000 walking by it every day saying, we're never automating again in 10 years. That was, horrible experiment. My job, I put my reputation on the line, or the person who ended up approving it. And so whatever we can do to help ensure that those projects are successfully implemented is really important to us. And then there's, kind of another piece of it too, in that, the material removal space is fairly niche at this point. Whereas welding is definitely more mature. I'm not going to say it's mature, but it's definitely, more common. People know you can do it. And a lot of people have done it. But generally, if you need to weld, you're going to have to do some sort of finishing or grinding process too. And we still get a lot of people coming to us at trade shows and, through other ways. And they're like, I had no idea that you could do this. I didn't know you could automate grinding. I didn't know you could automate finishing, or I didn't know you could automate sanding. And so there's so much, opportunity out there, and, helping, system integrators to, not necessarily just do these types of projects when they come across them or when they get a request, but to be out there looking for them as well, because it is a differentiator amongst the kind of solution provider system integration world.
Yeah. So if we keep with our theme of SME manufacturing, and, it's so important because you talked about the stats at the beginning. Was it 99% in Canada and 90? Did you say 98 in the US? Or
I don't have it in front of me, so please don't hold me to this, but I think it was 98.6% of businesses in the United States are classified as the small to medium enterprise. So It might not be, I thought about it after I said it, it might not be specifically tied to manufacturing, but I'm very sure that it tracks along that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Well, and I think the opportunity over the next, 4 or 5 years, they have a great opportunity ahead of them. right? We talked about onshoring and reshoring, and I don't believe they're buzzwords. I see it happening. I walk a lot of shop floors, and there's a buzz in the air. That's for sure. And manufacturing's coming back, so they have an opportunity. So are we as integrators answering the call, helping those guys realize the potential and realize their opportunities? Feel free to throw in some criticisms, what we need to do better, what are we doing good, where do we need to improve as folks trying to help that segment of that market.
One of the biggest things that I see as not so much a negative or a problem, because I think that most people genuinely want to help, but they want to provide a good solution and that sort of thing, right? So, but I've been to several facilities where they have told me, oh, we already bought one of these, or we have one of these coming, and somebody went in and sold them something, right? But it only addresses this part of the problem, and it's actually going to create other problems because they didn't look at a holistic solution, right? They knew that they wanted to automate welding, so they have a small welding cell coming in, but that welding cell is very limited in what it can do. It can only do a portion of their thing. It still needs tooling designed. It still needs all these other things designed, but they're still going to create a bottleneck because once they get that welding thing in there and it starts humming, then they still have a bottleneck here. They have a bottleneck feeding it. So it's going to sit idle, waiting for parts, right? And maybe really what they needed was more of a serial type assembly line. But the first person they went to said, yeah, we can get you a welding system, because at the top of their head, they just said, we have an issue welding. We have an issue making throughput on welding. But that really, the throughput on the welding is like, the little crust on the top, right? Once you scratch that off, there's all this other stuff underneath it. And I see that as being a big challenge, is that people are going in with the blinders to see exactly what they brought in to see, offering a solution for that. And then the plant, and to Shane's point, they find out 4, 5, 6 months later, like, well, what about this, and this, where that all could have been addressed together or a plan formulated. But I think a lot of these places they don't know what they don't know. They're relying on us to be the experts. And I'm not saying that happens in 100% of the facilities that I go to, but a lot of the people that are working with people at the distribution level that are selling more of these canned solutions, right? These robot in a box type solutions, don't even know that system integrators and robotic automation houses exist, right? They haven't been exposed to it. They've been manual forever. So I think, we talked about this. Your team was just in Dallas, right? And we had a big, long discussion on Tuesday, and I told them a little bit about my process and how I look at things when I walk into manufacturing facilities, right? Like, the anecdotal thing that I tell everybody is, my life is a giant episode of how it's made. I'm going to all these factories all over and just seeing how people make things, right? Whether they're castings or they're caskets or their aerospace parts or their complete pumps and valves and all these things, right? So like cars, buses, trains, all these things, right? So in a lot of those cases, you get invited into a plant, they take you to the back corner where there's like somebody just scrambling trying to keep up with whatever production, right? And it's a tough, dirty job. But you walk by 4 or 5 other cells where there's people also doing some manual processes that aren't as taxing, right? And to me, it's, I always look at it in the conversation that I try to push is, can we automate those other processes that are less risk, simpler, probably less investment, in capital, and reallocate those people to help these people back here in the back that are doing this thing, right? So maybe like, it's going to cost you 2 times more to do this one that you brought me in to see. But if we automate this and free up these people and we can bring them back here to make this other job simpler, is that a win for you? The other conversation that I think a lot of people struggle with is you've got to do this 100% automated, right? And where I try to, present the idea to people, if we only do 70%, and there's 30% manual touch up or a little bit that needs to happen, is that a win, right? Because a lot of these in small and medium-sized manufacturers, those parts were not designed for automated manufacturing. Those parts were designed for somebody to go at it with a hand tool, a file, some sort of hand grinder. They got very unique spaces. So to automate that last 30, 20, 10% might cost as much or more as the first 70%, right? So, where is that break line? And I think a lot of people have gotten themselves in trouble trying to do a 100% automation project as opposed to let's get it in there, let's get it working, and let's chip away at that last 30%, right? You're still going to have, if you still have an operator there loading, unloading parts, can they do some of these manual processes while they're waiting for the robot to do its job, right? What else is that person doing? Can we still have some of these things, and I think a lot of those are the challenges that we see. Engineers are going to want to engineer, and at some point you gotta shut the computer off and say, okay, we're done. We're launching this system, right? So, where do we draw those lines and how do we have those conversations and, get people to understand that there are levels of automation, right? And which level do you fit in?
Yeah. I would say for, system integrators, there's been, solution providers, however you want to identify. There's definitely a lot of things that are, helping the small to medium manufacturer that have improvements, I guess, if you want to call, things like different ways of financing or paying for the investment. Another one could be, the development of standardized cells or solutions, which aren't right for every situation, but, are definitely, there's a valid place for them within the market. One of the things that I do see that could potentially be a downfall is, system integrators who try to do it on their own without, engaging for support. And, I'm not, I want to be very clear here. I'm not talking about AV&R. Like, you guys are definitely leaders in the material removal space. So you have tons of experience, and you do engage with us, even though you have tons of experience, and you engage with other suppliers. I've witnessed it firsthand, and I really value that. But I've only been with PushCorp a short time, but I've been involved in conversations where system integrators like, no, we don't need training on your stuff. We can figure it out, and that's always at least an orange flag, if not a red flag for me in terms of kind of the approach that integrator solution provider might take, because material removal automation is complex. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and I've seen it fail, not only at PushCorp, but prior. And, usually it's not when we're involved, it's when, we're not involved, that happens. And it's unfortunate because the people that are getting hurt the most in that situation or suffering or having the worst outcomes are, the end user and the integrator. And, it's affecting, again, I've mentioned it a couple times, like reputation matters in this industry. And, I know not every supplier takes the same approach, but for us, we want to be there. We make ourselves available. We pick up the phone, you call Max, you call, any of our other sales engineers, you call Mike, our CEO, like, we're all willing to have a conversation and to support. And so that's, I would say, the one thing that is, there's, other things that Max mentioned as well, but the one thing that I do see out there that's rather unfortunate coming from a system integrator solution provider is that, if they kind of take on the mindset of we got this on our own, even if they can successfully implement that project, there's potentially so much more that they're leaving off the table.
Yeah, yeah. No, we always have to remind ourselves, because you try and move quick, right? And let's say we did a new application in, our reflex is we'd over to our cabinet, open up the cabinet. All right, guys, what's our first idea of how we could tackle this? It's not necessarily pick up the phone and say, hey, Max, have you seen this before? What do you think? Right. So we always have to remind ourselves. And one of the things I've tried to do more recently is just create those opportunities for those conversations. So, once a quarter, let's get together, come up to our place or get my team down and get some training done and just get people together to be able to talk about these things. And they'll have, in their back pocket, they've got a laundry list of a few things that would be great to solve and questions to ask. Because for sure, getting a tough application over the hump, we always say we get the job done. Maybe it's not always elegantly, we could do better but we never let our customer down, and we're there to the end to get a job done. So every bit of help along the way is very important. And one of my themes for this year is, the best business is the repeat business. So I think, integrators, that follow up after that system is installed, that's important too, because, and Max, to maybe build on one of the points you're saying, if you're not going to go after 100% the first time, right? So let's say everyone agrees, okay, we got a business case for 70%. Let's get that. Let's make it a success. It's moving towards automation and improving your facility. It's not a one-time thing, right? That's something you got to do every. You rinse and repeat. So that follow-up afterwards, and how can we get that 70% to 80%, or how can we get it to 95%? What's the next wave of improvements we can do together? That follow-up, that's important, because number one, if that customer answers the phone, okay, you're doing a good job of maintaining that relationship and making sure you're delivering that value. And number two, you both grow together as you solve that next problem. So for me, that's a good test. Are we heading in the right direction? If we're able to iterate and improve things as we go forward together.
Yeah, so, I think everybody would agree that it, for anybody in any business, it's more beneficial to keep a customer than to go find a new one.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely less expensive to keep a customer than to go find a new one. Having to get, especially today, getting all the purchasing paperwork done, getting into somebody's system, getting approved, building all that rapport again, right? So, but that's not to say that we don't want to help all these people and constantly be getting new customers, right? But once we get them, we want to keep them, right? Like that's the big thing. And again, in a lot of those cases, I think back to the partnership, right? Like it's a two-way street, right? Like I don't want to sell AV&R PushCorp equipment for the sake of selling PushCorp equipment. I want to sell you PushCorp equipment because it's the right thing for your application. It's the right thing to do, right? And I think, and that's true for anybody. I don't want to sell active compliance because it's more expensive and has higher margins. I want to sell active compliance because it makes sense. Where active compliance doesn't make sense, let's do passive. It's a lot less expensive, less moving parts, less electronics, so from that standpoint, right? Like selling people what they need, is important, to make sure that we're selling the right thing for the right reasons.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to let's chat about, in business, politics is one of those the dangerous topics, but everyone's talking about it right now. We have President-elect Trump coming in, and he set his sights on Canada and Mexico with some tariffs. So we're definitely talking about, what do we think is going to happen over the next 4 years? So I don't know if you guys want to warm up your crystal ball. What do you think's ahead of us in manufacturing automation next 4 years?
Yeah. Without getting too political, I think the next 4 years are going to be interesting. It's hard to say what everybody's expecting. I know what I can speak to and what I'm looking at,
Are you
and
optimistic or pessimistic, first of
I'm
all?
very, very optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic. I think that um, everything that we've talked about today is kind of leading up to this point, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I think it's gonna continue to be difficult to hire people in these roles on the manual finishing side within plants. I think with the tariffs, and what I see the purpose of the tariffs is keeping more business in the U.S. from being sourced offshores and keeping more Americans working to generate more income and those sort of things. And you can't do all those things without having to raise prices of things, right? Because, like I said, we're paying high dollars even for fast food. So these manufacturing people are gonna, you know, could be demanding a higher pay than that, right? So I think it all kind of goes through. But I also think I don't know how much, we've been going through this embracing and adoption of Industry 4.0 now for a while, right?
Mm.
The Internet of Things, the interconnection of things, big data, gathering data, how to use that data, how to process that data, how do you make decisions on this data, everything that we see from Facebook and Google and all this big data plants, monitoring how much gas are they using, how much wire are they using, how much abrasive are they using, how many paper towels are they going through, right? Like everybody's gathering data, right? And Industry 4.0 has seen that where I don't know if you guys looked at the definition of Industry 5.0, but the European Union puts Industry 5.0 as kind of the um, shift of focus from, and like I said, with the generations that are coming up and the way they see the world, and as these people start to get, as these younger generations start to get in these leadership roles, not only manufacturing, but also CEOs and different things that are going on, I think, their definition is that there's going to be a more empathetic look of, quality of life versus dollars made, right? And I think a lot of these things, and this is where the AI starts to come in, robots that are writing their own programs, these
Yeah.
programs that are designing tools based on parts, taking pictures of parts and saying, okay, I design me a clamp structure to hold this part down, within this tolerance, and the thing just gets created automatically. And I say, from a manufacturing standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot of these efficiencies start to come to light based on a lot of these AI things that we're doing today, right? And a lot
Mm.
of this
Yeah.
even goes back to, even going back to the initial control of the Nintendo Wii, with the remotes, right? I think we're going to see a lot of teleoperated automation, a lot of teleoperated type things where maybe somebody doesn't want to, it's hard to hire people to get out there and grind parts, but maybe we can hire people to play video games all day, holding on to like an Xbox controller, controlling robots, finishing parts or moving things around, right? That for those high mix, low volume type scenarios, right? So I think we're going to see these technologies kind of come and we're going to see all these things, all this software being created for cell phones and all this facial recognition, all that's going to move into like part recognition, and we're going to move
Yeah.
all that stuff from these things. And you look at the level of development being done at universities and colleges and even at the high school level with some of these robotics programs they have, right? Like all that
Yeah.
stuff is going to work its way to industry and manufacturing. So for all those reasons, I'm super optimistic of what's coming, right? And I want to make sure that we're placing our parts and we're putting the software and the hooks and everything so that our components, our technology can roll into that when it comes, right? And we're already doing a lot of that today by supporting a lot of these low programming, no program type solutions that are out there for automation. But those are only going to continue to improve, get better. Um, New technologies are going to become available. Chips are going to get faster, cameras are going to get faster, Sensors are going to get better. Things are going to be hardened to the environment. Like today, putting a camera in a grinding cell is tough. It's very dirty. It's dusty. How do you keep it clean? It still needs to be able to see, so, time of flight sensors, lasers, all these things that are more impervious to the dust are going to come down in price. We're going to come up with better ways to manufacture these things. So, I'm excited. I think it's all good news, even tariffs and all, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody's going to start to realize it's more about the partnerships, right? And everybody's got to work together if we're going to get to where we think we want to be, right? It's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'll be really interested to kind of see is, and Trump was very, clear in his kind of, and has historically been very clear in his America First kind of mentality. And I kind of see like two factors at play here. There's some parts of our society that are very focused on like the short term. And then there's parts of our society that are very focused on the long term. And politics tends to be one of those short term areas where it's like, 2 years ago was an eternity. 6 months ago was an eternity. There's things that just happen. Things happen so quickly that, it's like more of the news of the day or the news cycle versus kind of, more of the long term, which, arguably different countries do have different approaches. Generally I'd say like, countries like China are more long-term oriented. But the part that I'll be very interested to see is really about how businesses respond, over the next, 4 years in particular. And, because businesses like stability, they like to know what's going to happen in 10 years. They like to know, that the choices that they make today, that are the same variables are going to be in play, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. And, moving operation, creating a new plant, that is a serious investment. You think about, large manufacturers. I know we've been talking about the small to medium manufacturers a lot, but for the large manufacturers in particular, to move production from, Europe or China or Mexico to the US, that's a serious endeavor, multi-year, millions, if not billions of dollars. Like that's a large investment. And, I could see a situation where they may kind of just say, well, this is, even if we get the tariffs, this is the cost of doing business and we just have to increase prices. And, because in the long run, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. We don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. And maybe there'll be more favorable conditions. Who knows? I can't tell the future. So I think that's going to be the interesting part, and to your question about optimistic versus pessimistic. And I would have answered this question the same way, like no matter who won the election or what the outcome was, I'm super optimistic on, democracy, and I'm super optimistic on capitalism. Neither system is perfect, but I do think that, we have a really, bright future ahead, and, especially for manufacturing, because we need stuff. We need the things that we interact with daily, and it's kind of the hidden, a lot of it is hidden away. A lot of these other things get a lot more visibility, as far as more consumer driven products, stuff that our manufacturers that we support are making. But, we're in a fairly industrial area here, and, I'm seeing semi trucks driving by nonstop, carrying things around, the things that we interact with daily, have to be manufactured, and that's got to happen somewhere. And, I think that there's definitely benefits to it happening in, North America. And so I'm optimistic for what's ahead. And I mentioned this earlier in another context, but I think there's a lot of tailwinds that are really, in favor of robotics and automation, particularly in North America.
Yeah. I share your guys' optimism, and I don't take it personally. We don't take it personally that there's potentially some tariffs coming. I think, there's a mechanism to solve some problems. I know that there's some problems that have to get fixed. And I think that's one of the things that everybody kind of is helps with the optimism because some of with the short-term views of politics, sometimes those problems just get pushed down the road, right? For sure, debt problems, border problems, stuff like that, not popular, right? So for someone to take out the scalpel and start working at some of that stuff, it has to happen sometime. I believe it's temporary, and what I see is you guys are trying to get the engine going, right? I think the engine's going, but let's to get to the next level. And I don't know if you guys ever listened to Lex Friedman, his podcast, but I'll send you guys a link afterwards if you're interested. But he interviewed the president of Argentina, and they went Argentina like victims of hyperinflation and all types of issues, and he came into power, and he his political campaign, he was out with a chainsaw, right? As part of his campaigning, because he put together a plan for addressing debt, government debt, and for deregulation to help businesses thrive. And when I listened through that, and what Trump, and then he's recruited Elon Musk, that's their blueprint, is some of the things that he talked about. So it gives some pretty good insights, and when you put that in context, we got to get through some of the short-term pain, get the engine going at high levels, and us as a country, Canada, we've got a lot of value to bring to it. So I don't see any long-term issues there. We're good buddies. So I think for the future's bright, is my outlook as well too. So we're going a little over. Typically I try to keep this to an hour. We talked about the next wave of growth. Max, you talked about data, you talked about technology coming together. What is needed to unlock some of these changes, and who would be the person you'd want to sit down for dinner with to pitch some of this stuff to?
I mean, selfishly, everything we make directly interacts with a robot.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the robot manufacturers have embraced material removal or material removal manufacturers the way they have welding and painting. You can buy a full welding power supply interface, a robot with a full welding power supply interface on it, right? So OTC is the first one to go out and come out and do it, and we're working with them, and they have an interface to our things, and kudos to them. And it's awesome because they have a huge network of robots that are out there that are welding, and probably if they're welded at some point, there's some sort of finishing that happens on those parts, right? So for them, they are really trailblazing that, in that they have this whole interface on the robots being sold as a package. You can call OTC today and get it, right? But they, much like us, are very niche, right? But the big robot manufacturers, I just don't feel like they have put in the time or adopted the material removal. Like I said, PushCorp's been doing this for 30 years. And welding, I've said this before. I've said this before in other podcasts, but I feel like material removal right now is where welding was 15 years ago. And here at PushCorp, we've been waiting for everybody else to catch up, right? So I think that, there's a lot of features that would be beneficial. There'd be a lot of things that if a robot could do, or had an automatic, where you can just go in, put your make and model of tool that you're connecting to it, everything just kind of works, right? I think that would help. It would help integrators. It would help end users. It would help a lot of people. And that's not only for our products, but other material removal products that are out on the market as well. But I think there's a lot of things that can be done there, and even like I come from the welding world, so even like weld schedules, right, where you can put in the diameter of the wire, you can put in all these different features, and and then the robot program helps you do these things, right? There's things there that would be interesting in our market that I think would help. That would help bring new players to the industry. It would help existing system integrators save a lot of time in the deployment and the development. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen there.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say, I like that a round table of the product designers from the key robot manufacturers around the table having dinner together, talking about robotic finishing. I think that's a good one.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah. The main important question right after that is, what restaurant would you take them to? Would it be a Detroit restaurant, or where would you go?
Probably.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know. I don't know what
pizza
what venue
of some sort. I don't know.
What's
Pizza?
that?
Oh, I think you do better than
I'm
you can do better than that in Detroit.
I mean,
no?
I mean, there's so many cool places in Detroit. I mean, obviously I've got a huge affinity for the Dakota Inn. But if we're into the German thing, if we're into pizza, it'd definitely be Louis for me. But yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I don't think the venue is as important as the company you keep, and
for sure.
As long as we've got all the key players there, and we can all agree that it's worthwhile and we get something out of it. It could be a sandwich. It could be a sandwich here in my office for all I care.
Yeah, I hear you. So, I'm a bit of a foodie, so I'll take them both, right? And I have to put a plug out because I lived in Windsor for 11 years, so I got to know Detroit well. And the past, maybe 5-6 trips over the past 2-3 years that I've been down to Detroit, such a great time. The city is really vibrant right now, and some awesome restaurants. And I don't remember the names, but there's some good, farm to fork restaurants that came out, some great experiences, and a good vibe as well too. So a good plug into Detroit right now.
Very good.
Well, guys, I really appreciate your time, and it's been a lot of fun talking with you.
Same here. No, it's been great. I really appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, and appreciate you having the team down in Texas for training. We're going to have to do all this again.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Okay. Looking forward to it.
Cheers, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Michael. All right. Thanks. You as well.
So this concludes the episode of Robotics for All podcast by AV&R. If you don't want to miss another single episode, don't forget to subscribe to our show in your favorite podcast app. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll talk again soon.